zip around in the street and you get women who are wearing really brightly colored hijab and robes. And when I get there, basically the very first thing we do is we go to the place where these scientists, Fitzim and Dejene, first found Stephen's eye.
Which is where?
Okay, you've got the gear. I'm ready. Well, it's along the banks, the little pools that have been left along the sides of the bank of the river that runs through Diradawa. I'm ready to meet my first Stephen's eye. I love a little stagnant water. So we're standing in the shallow water on the edge of the river.
Can you see this one?
Yeah.
It is moving.
Yeah, I can see them.
Yeah.
And Dejene is scooping up water from these pools and puddles and looking at the larvae. You would say the chances are very high it's Stephen's eye.
Very highly.
And what he's trying to do when they collect samples in a place like this is figure out how much of the mosquito population is actually Steve. And they started doing this next to the river when the malaria outbreak began because a lot of the initial cases that were reported were in families who lived near here, near the river.
Right, so we are 100-meter radius from the largest area.
100-meter radius of everywhere you found a case?
Yeah.
And what they do is they go to the home of everyone who's diagnosed with malaria and they trap the mosquitoes in and around the house. So, lo and behold, 97% of the mosquitoes they catch are Anopheles stupens eye.
Wow, so this mosquito is clearly thriving, but is it mostly contained to the river?
No. So, in fact, they found Steve in a lot of other places that are a lot less predictable than a river. The places this mosquito is turning up are really surprising if you think about the ways that we traditionally think of mosquitoes in Africa behaving. Steve is so adaptable that, sure, she'll breed in these pools next to the river, but she'll also breed in water tanks. And she can breed in the amount of water that you might find in an old bottle cap. She will feed on humans, yes, but she'll also feed on livestock. And that's why actually the next place that Dejene wanted to take me was into a goat shed. So lots of families in Diradawa have these little outbuildings in their homes where they keep a couple of goats or a couple of sheep, maybe a cow. And it turns out that the mosquito will rest in there because it's cool and it's dark and it's moist during the daytime when it's really hot. And there's also, of course, a very accessible source of food.
Which is the goats.
The goats. So I'm following along behind Dejene down these narrow alleyways. Aha! An animal shed with a low roof. And the next thing you know, he's down on his hands and knees, crawling into these little buildings. They're maybe like 3 or 4 feet tall. They're crammed full of goats. And in he goes, and he wants to show me how this works. So in I go too. Okay, I am crawling into the goat shed. Here we go. I can see nothing. I'm gonna end up sitting on a goat. I'm too tall. I'm generally not made to be an entomologist. Hi, folks. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 goats. And he gets on his phone and he uses the flashlight to run it sort of really quickly over the walls. And there were mosquitoes. What did we find? Red mosquito. You can tell from out here.
Yeah, it's blood. Yeah, blood.
Okay. All right. Dejene is able, in the dark, in the gloom, with the goats, to identify which mosquitoes they are. I can barely see them. Oh. Angry goats. Sorry, goats. Sorry. He's like totally unfazed by the goats. And when he sees the mosquitoes, what he does is he's got what's called an aspirator, which is like a little glass tube with a piece of rubber piping on the end. And he puts the rubber pipe in his mouth and he holds the end of the glass tube up against the wall where he's seen a mosquito and he gently sucks it in. Got him? So that it's alive, but trapped. And what they do is, again, like take them back to the lab where they can sort them properly and identify which species it is, and then know whether he's finding Steve in these places.
This is an amazing thing to envision.
Well, it's particularly amazing if you think about doing it with like a large herd of goats, so who are also very interested in what's happening and are fully attempting to participate. These goats are staring at me. Excuse me, pardon me. Okay, all right, I'm up. Whew. Okay. So when Dejene had sucked all the visible mosquitoes off the walls, we crawled back out of the shed, and walking through more of these narrow streets, I gotta tell you, like, I'm looking at the place in a whole new way now, right? And I'm just thinking there are so many places where Steve could be. If you think that, like, she only needs small amounts of water to breed, and she's happy with artificial sources of water, she's happy in containers, in old plastic containers. I'm looking around and I'm seeing puddles under cisterns, and I'm seeing water storage containers in front of people's houses. Diridawa's municipal water only runs a couple of days a week, so when it turns on, everybody fills up some barrels, some jerry cans in front of their house and keeps them nearby. And they don't have reliable trash collection, so you'll get lots of these little bits of plastic around that are a place for it to breed. And when we talk about Stephen's Eye being a threat across Africa, like, that's one of the reasons why, right? Because these erratic municipal services, it's a very common problem. So I'm looking around Diridawa and I'm thinking Steve could be everywhere here, and I'm thinking, like, the public health system is absolutely not in a state to respond to this.
Well, what exactly is the public health infrastructure in a city like this that is now dealing with Steve and with so much malaria?
So Ethiopia has really been investing in primary care, in public health, but they don't have urban malaria response, right? Remember, it hasn't been an urban disease, so there's no muscle memory in the city for responding. People don't have immunity, they get very ill, and clinics don't know what they're looking at. I talked to a woman, a nurse, who was pregnant when she got malaria. She got incredibly sick, but it was 10 days and, you know, a half dozen malaria tests before she got a confirmed diagnosis because nobody was looking for it.
And this is a nurse who presumably has a lot of strong ties to the medical community.
Yeah, when you get a sudden severe malaria outbreak in a place that's not expecting it, it can really quickly start to derail things, right? And if you think that there are 600 million people who live in cities in Africa, then that's so many people who are potentially vulnerable to this mosquito. So when you start to put all of those things together, you get the scenario that keeps Ethiopian scientists awake at night. That's really terrifying, that CDC scientist who first told me about this.
And somewhat counterintuitively, we think of cities as places that represent progress and where healthcare is going to be better than in rural Africa. You're saying that it's the opposite in this case, that treatment is worse and the opportunities for the mosquitoes to grow are even greater.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's hopeless, right? I don't think that there's a reason why cities can't learn to respond to this, why people can't develop this expertise, but it doesn't exist now.
Well, let's turn to the question of solutions, which is definitely the thing you set out to report on. Are there any? And not just solutions to Steve in African cities, but to the adaptations that are presenting such problems in rural Africa as well. What can African governments do about this beyond what they've already done?
So there are some new solutions, and each one of them comes with some challenges. First of all, there are improvements on the things we have. There are new classes of insecticides being brought to market, and those will hopefully kill mosquitoes more effectively. There's also some really interesting new innovative technologies. I went to Kenya to see a clinical trial of something called a spatial repellent, which is this sheet of clear plastic. It's about the size of a piece of loose leaf, and it's soaked in a repellent that confuses the mosquitoes, keeps them from being able to bite. So the early indications are that both of these things are working really well. but our mosquitoes all the time are adapting, right? And so eventually you're going to run into this question of resistance again.
Right, all these things sound like they ultimately have a shelf life. They can't last all that long given just how quickly mosquitoes evolve and adapt.
Yeah, so that's why you need to come at this from a couple of different directions, right? And that's one of the places where I would say there's a lot of hope right now. There's a new malaria vaccine that's being rolled out in sub-Saharan Africa. You give it to small children and it should be able to provide them with a lot of protection throughout their lives. But, vaccines, like we saw with COVID, they're challenging to deliver and they can be expensive. They're coming in at about $10 per child, which maybe doesn't sound like so much, but if you think about the fact that, for example, Tanzania, their whole health budget is $2 per person per year. So stacked against that, these vaccines are really going to cost a lot.
So the solution situation is not where anyone wants it to be. As you've been talking, Stephanie, it's occurred to me that we've spent this whole conversation talking about Africa, but Steve seemed to come from outside of Africa to Africa, and now it's Africa's problem. I have to assume that a fear might be that as malaria becomes a bigger and bigger crisis in Africa for all the reasons we're talking about here, Africa could export its malaria problem to somewhere else in the world. Is that what the scientists you talk to fear?
I think I would say it's not so much about export. It's not about something that comes on a boat. It's about something much bigger than that. What we've been seeing with mosquito-borne disease in the last few years is a really big impact from climate change. Lots of places are becoming a better environment for mosquitoes that carry a lot of different diseases, not just malaria. I think what we're seeing is that in a very quickly changing world, mosquitoes do better, move faster than we do. And for me, that's the lesson from Steve that I saw in Ethiopia.
Not that Steve's going to leave Africa and come to other parts of the world, invade other continents, but that the environmental issues that are present in a place like Africa are present elsewhere. That's the problem.
That as humans, we create lots of situations where mosquitoes can flourish. They look different in different places, cities and towns, Africa versus Latin America, but what those places have in common is that mosquitoes are thriving and posing a threat that we're not nearly quick enough in providing solutions for.
Or, it sounds like from the case of Africa, prepared to deal with in real time.
No, not yet. I think for me the lesson of what I saw in Dire Dawa, what's happened with Steve, is really just how quickly things can go south, right? You can think that you don't have the problem, or you can think that you have the problem managed, or that you have the tools you need. And the way mosquitoes work, incredibly quickly, you can find yourself with a public health crisis. And I think as we think about the spread of mosquitoes and the threat they pose, I think that should be alarming for everybody.
Well, Stephanie, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
I wouldn't give up.
And more than 75,000 employees of the healthcare company Kaiser Permanente began a 3-day strike on Wednesday, becoming the latest group of unionized workers to walk off the job in the past few months. The workers are demanding higher wages, which they say are necessary to end labor shortages that have plagued the company for years. The strike is being closely watched because Kaiser Permanente's healthcare plans cover 13 million Americans across 8 states. Today's episode was produced by Alex Stern, Will Reed, Rob Zipko, and Sydney Harper. It was edited by MJ Davis-Lynn. Contains original music by Romy Misto, Mary Lozano, and Dan Powell, and was engineered by Alyssa Moxley. Our theme music is by Jim Brunberg and Ben Lansford of Wonderly. That's it for the Daily. I'm Michael Obaro. See you tomorrow.
We see the potential in John Burke, president of Trek Bicycles.
Trek started in Waterloo, Wisconsin, and now it spans the globe.
That's why we're here, to help make going global happen. JP Morgan Chase. JP Morgan Chase Bank, member FDIC.
LinkedIn presents.
Welcome to the next big idea. I'm Rufus Griscom. Have you ever been brought to tears by a TV commercial?
Hiding out underground is the survival strategy of choice for lots of tortoises and turtles as well. Reptiles are perceived as loners, a reputation that isn't entirely deserved. Snakes often share their dens with other snakes. Garter snakes are famous for hibernating in huge groups that may consist of hundreds or even thousands of individuals. One Canadian den reportedly contained no fewer than 8,000 snakes. And eastern diamondback rattlesnakes often share a den with dormant gopher tortoises. Typically, they live in climes warm enough that they will be active on and off during the winter.
The 90-Second Naturalist is a production of Cincinnati Public Radio and the Cincinnati Zoo, with support from Cincinnati Public Radio members to spread the good news of the natural world.
Consumed with desire for his former lover, Daisy Buchanan, Jay Gatsby draws new neighbor Nick Carraway into his desperate pursuit to win her back.
This man Gatsby set over his chauffeur with an invitation.
I'm sorry, I'm Gatsby.
The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, adapted by Annalise Erickson, starring Rufus Sewell as Jay Gatsby. Next time on LA Theater Works.
Saturday evening at 8 on WVXU and WMUB.
This is Layla Falden with NPR. If you've collected a few classic cars over the years and you also love public radio, consider this. Donate one or more of those classics to help public radio bring you the news you rely on. The process is easy. Best of all, the proceeds support this station's coverage of the news, including Morning Edition. Learn more about donating a classic car by visiting this station's website, and thanks.
To donate your car, go to WVXU.org under Ways to Give.
Worth hearing. It's about a 30-something single woman named Kanika Kapoor. She gets made fun of a little in school. She grows up to be a food blogger, and like a lot of us, you know, she's looking for love. Through all of her dating life, Kanika has never had an orgasm. And then one night, she has one, but the only problem is she can't quite remember who was in the bed there next to her. But she's going to find out. That's the premise for the new film, Thank You for Coming. It's being called one of the most groundbreaking and important films to come out of India this year. I also think it might just be one of the most popular. I was just looking at the trailer a few minutes ago, and it had like 14 million views. So Anil Kapoor is one of the producers of the film. He also has a cameo as this Silver Fox Professor. Emil is one of the biggest stars in Indian film history. He's won countless awards for his work over the years. And if you're not as familiar with Indian cinema, you might know him from being the game show host in the movie Slumdog Millionaire. We talk about that. You might know him from like 24 or Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Thank You for Coming is the name of the film. It hits cinemas tomorrow, but its world premiere was at this year's Toronto International Film Festival. Anil Kapoor dropped by our Q studio right off a flight from Dubai to talk a little bit about his career. Here's our conversation. You are just a few hours away from the world premiere. How are you feeling?
Well, I'm very excited. It's one of my wishes, one of the bucket lists to come to Toronto for the Toronto Film Festival, TIFF as I call it. Just wanted to be there. I was supposed to be here in 2008, 2009, 2008, Slumdog Millionaire, but my visa didn't come in time, so I couldn't be here. And here I am after so many years, and it happened. It happened with the film I produced, and I've got a small cameo in the film, and it's produced by my daughter and myself, and directed by my son-in-law. It's all in the family.
What does that mean for you to have this be a family affair with your daughter and son-in-law?
Well, it's tough. It's tough to have a family, making a film with a family. It is not that easy.
Why is that?
Yeah, because, sometimes, I am a little brutal, when I'm, at least when I'm working. So for me, when I make choices in a film, and if I see something that I don't like it, or whatever it is, or if I have to, if they want something very honest feedback from me, where my work is concerned, and for me, making films, acting in films is my work, and that's what I love. So I cannot be dishonest with it. So, and then of course you have to be so brutally honest with your family. And it doesn't matter if she's my daughter or my son-in-law. If I don't like something, I have to say it honestly, and that's what I do. So it's painful.
It's hard sometimes.
It's very hard.
Negative, and you have to give hard feedback to members of your family.
Absolutely. But they're used to it. They know that the first time I see the first cut, obviously I just freak out. Or sometimes I see the first cut and I just leave the editing editors. What is this? That kind of stuff. And when I see the second, no, it's not that bad. Then and then of course I saw the film, and most of the films my daughter's produced in now have been really inspiring, motivating, something out of the box, something which she's when you talk about films which are headed by a leading lady in India, we've always been very not entertaining films, not funny films, not comedies,
but often dramas, tragedies.
Veer believes that why can't we make entertaining and comedies and fun films with girls?
My understanding is this film is quite groundbreaking. In the description for it at the Toronto Film Festival, it says this discusses subject matter unlike any we've seen in an Indian film at the Toronto Festival before. What's your perspective on that? Does this film seem groundbreaking to you?
You see, to be honest with you, I've been my son, and she's my child, and there's a lot. She also takes these kind of decisions which she doesn't realize is going to be groundbreaking. She just likes the story, and she likes the way it feels when she hears it, and she wants to work on it. She believes in it, and she feels it's going to be something I'm very passionately motivated, and we go ahead and do it. And if it becomes groundbreaking, it's not up to us. It's the people who decide it's groundbreaking or not. You cannot want to do something which is just for the sake of that it's groundbreaking or it's different. You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know when you make it. When you make a painting or you art, when you act, or you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And the right people have to come together, the right team, the right director, the right cast, and then it becomes what it has to become. Otherwise, instinctively you feel there's something like something new, something which I've never heard, something which I've never been done. Very scary it is. It's not the usual stuff you feel, and that's the fun of it.
It's very positive in its way it talks about sex. It's very positive in the way it talks about desire, the way it talks about relationships. I think that was part of the thing that seems groundbreaking.
Yes, in a way, it is. It's for us. It's like this film is very honest in the casting. in the writers, they all are very, very relatively new. And
except for you, you're a big star.
Yeah, that's the reason they hardly gave me a role in the film. But he's the big star. Let's give him the worst role in the film.
Here's the big star. Let's give him 6 lines.
And I'm begging for more lines.
That sounds like you're very proud of your daughter for making this film.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I want to come back to the film a little bit later, but it's so rare to get an opportunity to talk to you, especially in person. I mean, as you mentioned, this is your first time at the Toronto International Film Festival. I'd like to go back to the beginning of your film career and just ask broadly, what was it that drew you to acting when you were young?
I don't know, I was very fortunate from the time I came into my senses. I just wanted to be an actor. I met a lot of actors and a lot of people, who were engineers or scientists or businessmen or entrepreneurs or doctors, or they always felt that they wanted to do something else and they became what they were. But I was very clear the time I came to my senses. I was, matter of fact, almost 10 or 11 years old when I, without letting anybody know, I auditioned for a film and I got the film as a child actor.
You ran away to audition for that film.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me that story.
Yeah. I remember, there are these background actors. This friend of mine, his father was the one who, we have these agents who get all these background actors, and and the filmmakers and the directors, they said, okay, they have the responsibility. Not only the background actors, but small cameos, small roles. So this friend, his father was, and then he asked me one day very casually, would you like to act? I said, yeah, of course, I love to act. That's what I want to do. So this is one film which is happening, and we have to go to the studio for the audition. And I said, if I tell my parents, they said, you better study. This is the time you're just in school and you want to, begin. I said, without informing them, I went and I did it and I passed. And then I said, if I tell them I've been accepted and not been, I'm being part of the film, then I said, let me do 1 or 2 days of shooting, 1 or 2 days of shooting, then I'll tell them, so that they can't throw me out. And my father being a film producer also, he will not want me, get out of the film and, they have losses. Unprofessional. You would never want anybody to be unprofessional. So I shot for the film. And after I shot for the film, I told them, I said, make this film. So that's the story.
How did they take it when they told them?
Well, they had no choice.
But were they happy? Were they...
Well, they were, yeah, I think they were, parents are, I think when they see the child happy, they're happy, that kind of stuff. Not happy that I've become an actor, but they're happy that they just, that I'm happy doing that. And then, of course, I followed what I wanted to do, and I finished my school, then I went to college, university, and before I could finish my university, before I could get a degree, I just decided, I said, no, why should I get a degree, or why do I finish my studies? Let me get into acting. And I started acting very young, and I've been in this business since 43 years now.
There's the craft, right? There's acting.
Yeah.
It's your work. As you said, I've been busy for 40 years and I've been doing that work my entire life. That's a thing you can control. You can control when I show up to work. I know my lines. I know how to give. I know how to do what I do. You strike me as that kind of person.
Because I love it.
Yep.
Because I'm passionate about it.
There's the other thing, which is the fame part of the equation, which we don't ask for, which comes along with that other part. How did you find because you're very famous, how did you find when the fame started to enter your life?
But I felt it was to give me more job opportunities.
Yeah.
For me, it was just, just getting more job opportunities. So I took it not in a way that fame, for me, actually this fame, I get more friends. I'll get more opportunities to work with better filmmakers, directors, better stories will come to me. That's the way I tackle. I really not got excited about that, but I was more excited that I'm going to get more work.
It didn't impact your life? It didn't interfere with your life?
No, it's the same. I just get up in the morning and I just look forward to being on the set. I look forward to prepping for my role. I look forward to telling stories. I look forward to making my director happy. I look forward to... I just do anything for if someone asks me, Okay, I'll pay you so much, and I want you to do this, or this will, or if I do this